Well, at the beginning was a very stormy Wednesday morning in June of 1934. When I was born, I wasn't breathing, I was blue. I reckon I weighed about 4 pounds, I looked like a skint rabbit. And the old midwife dunked me in hot and cold water and got me breathing. And then they wrapped me up in a blanket with a hot brick and stuck me in the oven. And so I've been a survivor since day one. And that was up Port Stephens, Warramai area. Growing up, I hated it actually, because when I went to school I was told I was stupid. Get down the back, sit down and shut up, and if anything was pinched in the town, the copper used to just walk into my mother's kitchen and say, "Mrs, your kids have been pinching." He never called her Mrs Newlin. He never showed her any respect. And people have said things to my mother in the street when my young brother and I were with her, and you'd wished you'd had a gun, you would have shot him. And they're memories that never go away. We were discriminated against totally because I never got an education because I was told I was stupid, get down the back. Your mother's an Aboriginal and you wouldn't know, you're not capable of learning. And so I did get discriminated against. When I was in the army, a company sergeant major said to me once, he said, "How come you drink with the black fellas in the canteen?" I said, "Because I'm Aboriginal." And he put a lot of shit on me after that, you know. It was, you'd get blamed for things being broken and stolen, and whether you did it or not, you know, you get it down on them and hate everybody. But yeah, when you grow up in a small town where you're the only Aboriginal family there, that you get completely ostracised. You're not. None of the local girls have anything to do with you. And I never really got into any deep friendships with them. Didn't worry me anyway. I was always a bit of a loner. I still am, I suppose. I only ever went to primary school, and I walked out of school when I was 14, and I went to work in the bush. And a couple of years later, a bloke talked me into going to Queensland, into Brisbane. He reckoned there was gold in the streets, and I always said the only gold I ever saw was what the horses left. And that was in 1951, and I put my age up and went into the army, into the first intake of national service. When people look at movies and newsreel reports about war and all that, they don't give the audience the smell. The smell, the stink. There's a particular stink. Dead bodies and blood and guts and everything. And it hangs in the air, the smell of cordite and all the stuff, of explosions and all that. But the other thing is, there's always a certain amount of refugees, and people are starving. The refugees are starving. You know, people fight one another off for scraps. You know, if we chucked a tin of bully to them, they'd fight one another for it. And, all those things. And when you're young, you don't see that. You don't realise, and you're not. You block it out. Otherwise, if you don't block it out, you'd go under. But even after all those years, you still get flashbacks. People say they don't, they're telling lies. Still get flashbacks. But one of the saddest things, when I came back to Australia, I ran into a mate's wife, and he was missing in action, but I don't know whatever happened to him, and she cried, and I didn't know how to react to it, and I made some stupid excuse, and I walked away and left her. I know I should have stayed and probably given her a hug. But they're sort of things that you do block out, and that's why when I come home and I was drunk for a month and blocking all that out, and my mother couldn't understand it. She was going crook at me for being drunk, but it was the only way I could cope. And yeah, it's not easy, but now when they come back home, they got all sorts of, they can get counselling and everything else, but in our day it was, if you went to counselling you were weak, you know, get over it and come and have a drink, and totally different people. You know, it's like in the First World War, they had denied that people had shell shock and post-traumatic traumas and stress. It exists. I mean, you can't not do all those things and see all those things and not have had problems. But you've got to learn to put it aside and put it in little compartments. Otherwise, you know, the old military hospitals and the psych centres were full. Blokes couldn't cope. And I mean, a number of Vietnam veterans and blokes are back from the Middle East, this time Iraq and Afghanistan, committing suicide. And yeah, no, and you wonder if ever it'll explode in your head or what. No, so you do lock it away. But I've learned to unload all that. I mean, a lot of my writing, I write things down and I don't want anybody to see it, and I either set fire to it or flush it down the toilet. Yeah, get it out of your system. Don't lock it in. My local doctor's still amazed that my blood pressure's normal, because I said I stopped worrying years ago. Yeah, it's a day at a time, that's all I can say. There's a lot of things that you don't talk about. But yeah, one of the problems was I blamed society in a way for my drinking, but it wasn't all that. But for the raw deal I got, for a long time, and I suppose I hated everything and everyone, and it was a way of sort of slow suicide to drink and knock yourself about, do all sorts of stupid things and get into trouble. And the only time I got into trouble was because of grog. I couldn't relate to sit down and talk to the blokes I went to school with that had never been in the army or been overseas. And I used to get in the pub with the old blokes from World War I. They were the only blokes I could talk to and understand what I was going through. Then later on, when I decided to stop drinking, it made a lot of difference psychologically. When I used to sleep, I used to wrap up like in a fetal position and pull the blankets over me and in that cocoon, and as I got sober I used to get further out the blankets, and I can't stand to have my face covered now. I've got to have my head and shoulders out. Yeah, and I suppose in a way it was growing up. I was very immature, as they say, 15 for 15 years. And you can't go around hating people all your life. It only affects you, it doesn't affect them. And when I first started to write, I didn't realise that I was writing out a lot of anger. And one particular poem that I wrote was, I called it The Sanctimonious Bastard. It was about the things that had happened to my mother. And after I wrote that, and I sat down and I looked at it and I had a cry, and I said, that's it, I would never write another one. But about 6 weeks later, I was writing a report and something said, write this, and I wrote a poem called Sweetwater. And it was sort of like a breakthrough thing. It was beautiful. Eternal life. Well, after walking around Uluru with my son, this came to me, and I called it eternal life. I looked beyond the stars and saw your image. It was implanted on my senses in galaxies unknown to earthlings, where spirits dwell in harmony. It's where I've travelled, unencumbered by flesh that tethers me to this planet. And many other times of freedom, moving from reality to reality and communicating with spirits awaiting rebirth and souls being cleansed of impurities. The dreaming is the giver of eternal life, and whether we believe it or not, it works for us. And you were there many generations ago, and now I meet you in earthly form. For what purpose? It is for the future, to unravel this mystery of time. Fear not, the dreaming spirits do not lie, nor do they play games with those they love. You can only live life a day at a time, but most of my mates now, they're all dropped off the perch, and because most of them are older than me, seeing that I'd put my age up to go in there, and they've dropped dead and had strokes and had memory problems, and yeah, it's sad when you look and you see them when you knew them when they were nice and sprightly and that, but it's like my brother that got killed in World War II, and you know, he'll never be more than 18, and I try to envisage him as being old like my other brother was, but no, and like there was 8 of us in the family. There were 6 boys and 2 girls, and there's only my brother and I left, and he's 4 years older than me, so yeah, you wonder how long we got. But as I said, a day at a time, that's all you can live, and enjoy life. Try not to do any damage to anybody.